It's supposed to get to 117.
When are you coming back to Colorado? I would think almost immediately.
Yes.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay. Are you back for the summer then?
Yes.
Okay, good.
What's worse is I'm here for a swim meet for 2 little girls, and we have to sit outside in the sun.
Oh, that's take your umbrella.
And water.
Yeah, I have plenty of water. Looks like we've got quite a few people coming in, so we'll give it just a couple of minutes here. I know Chris is going to join us. Hi, Lori. Hi, Shelly. See Adam's on here as well now. We're getting a good group of people here.
Hi guys. Hi Pat.
Hello. How are you, Kim?
Great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We're off to a running start for the summer.
You got it. I'm just glad we survived graduation and figuring out next steps.
Me too. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry that I'm a little pokey joining you.
We've got quite a few people coming in, Chris, so we're the doorbell keeps going off. So but I'll give it here one more minute. I think the doorbell's starting to slow down. And we'll get rolling. So Jill was just telling us that she's in Arizona right now. It's going to be 117 today.
Oh, holy cow.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
She got a swim meet. Otherwise, she'd be back in Colorado, it sounds like.
Hey, I had to escape 3 graduations in 4 days. It was like these grandkids are driving me nuts.
Yeah, that sounds like Chris Godowski's schedule. We should just sign you to Chris next year, and you can go to all of them, Bill.
I'll just follow him and Kim around.
Sounds like a good plan. Did you have a good, I'm not sure when you went out to Arizona, Jill, but we had a stretch here from January pretty much through March where we were we averaged a snowstorm every 8 days. It was.
I happened to be in Arizona for that, or in Colorado for that.
Oh man, your timing, we got to talk about your timing. I got to help you build a calendar.
Yeah, definitely.
Missed the snow, missed the heat. Oh, well,
Yeah.
you have to see a lot of snow then this year.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It sounds like the doorbell's slowing down a little bit. So thank you all for joining us today. Kevin's off today, so I'm going to act as facilitator. Appreciate so many of you being able to join us on such short notice. So we want to talk to you today about Independence Academy. We did talk to the Board of Education about this last Wednesday night. So President Goldstein, you're going to see a very similar presentation that you saw last Wednesday night. So we do want to talk to you about the need for a move of this program. And we're going to start out with, if you want to go to the next slide here, the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of the needs and how we ended up where we are. And so I'm going to turn this over to Chris to talk about that. And then when we're done talking about this section, then Ashley Toomey is going to talk to us a little bit about the programming needs and what's kind of the difference, the students that both programs serve, the needs that we have in those programs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the financing and construction and what we're trying to do here. So Chris, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Pat. I'm sorry, folks. One of the myths out there is once you get past the end of the school year that all the things slow down to a really easy pace, and there are some parts of the day that can be that way. Unfortunately for me, I've still got a lot of stuff that's kind of moving and shaking pretty fast right now. So my apologies. A little bit of background here as I look at the slide about why are we making this recommendation and the timing of the decision. It was about 3 years ago that we made a concerted push to try to decouple Independence Academy and Pathways from one another. It's been a poor arranged marriage for quite a long period of time because the programs are very dissimilar. Pathways, I think many people have a greater understanding of that program, given that we talk about it quite a bit. It's an important place for kids who are credit deficient to go complete their high school education, either by making up just the credits they need in the most efficient way, or through a competency-based model for granting diplomas where you take a work keys assessment and conclude your education there. Pathways has grown tremendously. It was about 25 kids or so, I think, when it was first set up in an ESC classroom a decade ago, roughly, and now we have over 300 kids each year earning diplomas and many other kids participating. So the program has grown a lot, but it's really focused on kids at high school level, filling in gaps, earning credits, and moving on. Independence Academy serves kids with the most intense emotional and behavioral needs in our system. They're often students that, if it weren't for Independence Academy, would be going to really costly private placements during the day, places like, and I don't know that all these places even exist anymore, but to Laredon, which serves kids with high intensity special needs, places like Firefly that serve kids with intense needs on the autism spectrum. Cleo Wallace is a place that historically provided day treatment programming, can be very pricey. $30,000 to $90,000 a year for those kinds of programs is my recollection of a rough range of cost. And what we've seen as Pathways has grown bigger and Independence Academy continues to serve roughly 30 kids with these kinds of needs and challenges, is that Pathways has encroached on more and more space of IA, so there's less room for kids to have to calm down, to get their behavior regulated so they can return back to their classroom. We have people at Pathways working in closets and many people sharing a same office, which is less than ideal in terms of having conversations around confidential matters. So space has become tight, and the disruptions that cause from kids at Independence Academy having a really significant emotional or behavioral incident and yelling, screaming, cussing, throwing things, running out of the room, out of the school, damaging the school. Those kinds of events happen at a fairly high frequency, and so it's compromised the ability of the Pathways staff to best support the needs of their kids. So for a number of years, we've wanted to decouple them. In 2019, we got approval from the Board of Education, I believe after talking to this group, to try to make an offer on buying the Horizons North Credit Union building off of Washington Street over there by Sherwin-Williams Paint Store and Tokyo Teriyaki, those kinds of places. In the end, we couldn't reach agreement with Horizons North about price. We've since done some other looking around for sites. One that I recall us looking at within the last year or so was a former for-profit higher education school office space down by Thornton High School, a little bit south of there. So we've been continuing to look for space. We've had Matt Schaefer looking for opportunities. We've visited a number of sites. What we often find is that those kinds of commercial buildings that are already built and constructed are configured in ways that aren't amenable to what we need for our programming needs of either IA or Pathways. And beyond configuration, there's different code requirements that apply that make retrofitting very expensive and time consuming. So for a long time, we've been trying to pursue a solution to decouple these two programs, haven't had success. I believe many of us were in a spot of feeling like this would most likely be a need that we would address through new build construction with a new bond being passed hopefully in 2023. And then the one thing I think well, two things. One other avenue beyond just buying a building that already exists that we've explored in the recent months is trying to lease some space. So at the same time that we were looking at leasing space for 5-Star Online, I asked our group to consider whether we should also lease another space and relocate Independence Academy there. And we've looked at places like this Fusion Dance Art Studio up on Washington as a possibility for doing that. The challenge that comes with that is even in an environment where it feels like commercial space may not be as desirable as it was pre-pandemic, the lease rates are still significant. And for us, as something like the Dance Fusion place, by the time you do tenant finish and you pay rent, it's probably in the $4 million range to lease space over the next 8 to 10 years. And so it feels like there's a lot of delays in getting space finished right now. There's urgency to get these programs decoupled. It's gotten worse and worse this last year. And with our former early childhood education center now being in a spot where we need to demolish it because of its age and the water intrusion issues that we talked to you all about, I think sometime within the last 6 to 9 months, it feels like fixing this on our own and tearing down our existing ECEC and repurposing that space to serving a need that can be much more cost effective than leasing space is now an option that wasn't on the table for us 6 to 9 months ago. So that's some of the background. If I had to digest this more succinctly, and I apologize for some of my rambling presentation today, I just have had meetings stacked. The takeaways I'd want you to have in mind is this isn't a new thing that's been cooked up. We've been working for 3 to 4 years to try to find a way for these programs to have separate space. We've just been unsuccessful in either finding a building to buy or finding a cost-effective option to lease. A second point is that things have gotten more challenging in terms of what was already a difficult arranged marriage between the two programs during the course of this year. And we actually see growing demand to have more of these center-based, high-intensity special needs programs than what we currently have. There's not enough space in the private sector, so providing more of this kind of space to serve not only students with needs middle and high school, but potentially elementary school age kids is a pressing need in our system. And then the third piece of this is, given that we're going to be tearing down ECEC, it's just kind of changed what we think are possibilities and timelines to get this done. And as opposed to waiting for the 2023 bond, we feel like we have some double options to get this done and be ready for the fall of 23. And would appreciate your feedback and your consideration of that whole plan today. Pat, is this helpful in terms of what you were hoping I would do on the front end?
Perfect, sir. Thank you very much. So we'll go to the next slide if you're ready. Okay, so Ashley.
Hi, so I'm just going to kind of reiterate a lot of the things that Chris already mentioned around.
Ashley,
Can
real
you
quick.
hear me?
Well, no, we can, but I was wondering if you could do an introduction because I'm not sure that you've met this group before.
And my screen doesn't say my name, so I was having some technical difficulties. So I'm Ashley Toomey. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Support Services, and I've been working really closely supervising Independence Academy this school year. So I'm just going to kind of walk through some history of the programming, again, just kind of going into a little bit more detail on the things that Chris already mentioned. This is a picture of the Future Center, which houses Pathways and Independence Academy currently. And then I'll just kind of review some of the things that Independence Academy really needs moving forward as we look at a new space. So you can go to the next slide. So Independence Academy became part of our district in 2010 after the closure of a day treatment facility, which was known as Flatirons Academy. And it was initially housed at Northeast Middle School, which is currently STEM Lab. And then it moved to the Future Center in 2011. And Pathways was created in 2010 and it supported only 25 students. And it's really to support students with graduation. So by the end of that school year, they had more than 250 students, and 50 of those students earned their high school diploma. And in 2011 and 12, Pathways also moved into the Future Center and expanded their programming to include a traditional diploma and a competency-based diploma option. So currently the Pathways program serves over 500 students, and in the 2020-2021 school year, they graduated 300 students from the program. So it really has grown significantly since kind of the inception of the program in 2010. Next slide. So the Pathways program, again, is designed to support credit recovery for students. They have a blended learning model, and they combine that school attendance and support with online work. And the day is divided into 3 sections. So they accommodate students throughout the day, including in the evenings, for those students who are working as well. So they do require more classrooms and office space than they did when it opened. And it originally was designed where Pathways had the whole bottom of the Future Center and Independence Academy was housed in the top. And now Pathways has a portion of the top as well. So the students at Pathways are having to enter Independence Academy to go to their classes, which can pose some significant safety risks when we do have students who are escalated, emotionally charged. They could have to be in kind of a lockout situation if we have an aggressive student. So they're really in the midst of what's happening at Independence Academy when they're attending on that second floor. And it also has led Independence Academy to only have access to 4 classrooms in that upper floor. Next slide. So Independence Academy, as Chris mentioned, is our most intensive program within Adams 12, and we serve students with emotional behavioral disorders. Independence Academy is a separate school setting, which means all of the students that attend this program are on IEPs, and they have no general education peers within the program. Currently, we have around 32 students, and we can serve up to 40 within the program as it currently exists with the 4 classrooms that we have that we're able to use. So the things that we really require moving forward are classrooms to meet a variety of content needs for grades 6 through 12. So we do serve middle and high school students. Additional smaller spaces to provide academic and behavior intervention. So currently we do not have any extra spaces to do small group instruction, whether that's behavior or direct instruction. According to the student's IEP, that has to happen within the general ed within the typical classroom setting. And then small safe spaces for students to de-escalate. So we don't have any spaces available currently where students can access coping tools, sensory strategies, quiet workspace when they are feeling escalated or emotionally charged. So that's really something that's needed. And then additional mental health offices. Right now, our 2 mental health providers are sharing one office, which really causes some issue when confidential conversations need to occur, or we have multiple students who are escalated at the same time. There's really a limit to where they can go currently. And then safe and accessible rec spaces. We do have a field outside, but it's kind of across the parking lot, and they do not have any indoor rec space or extra space where they can do activities inside. And really that kind of less stimulating environment does not exist. Next slide. So we have the potential to grow Independence Academy not only in number of students, but also in the population of students that we serve. So currently we serve students with emotional behavioral disorders, but we really would like to expand to serve students on the autism spectrum in grades 6 through 12 as well. As Chris mentioned, it is very difficult and very expensive to get students into day treatment facilities and programs outside of our district. So some students are waiting months to receive the level of service that they need. If we were able to house this within our own district, we would be able to serve a lot of those students right here without having to go through that lengthy or expensive process. So this would also mean that Pathways and Independence Academy would need their own office staff, health aides, and campus supervisors, because they do currently share those. And then that would mean more office spaces are needed for each program. But Pathways would continue to be housed at the Future Center, so that would allow them for growth as well into that extra space that's currently housed by Independence Academy. So we have the potential to serve more than 40 students, even in the emotional behavioral realm, and then potentially double that if we're able to serve students on the autism spectrum.
Okay, we will go to the next slide real quick. I guess we could stop real quick and ask if anyone has any questions before we start talking about construction, what the plan is. Is there any questions about the programming?
Hey, Pat, this is Jeff. Can you just reiterate on the Independence Academy side, how many students we currently serve, what the unmet need is, and then how many students you anticipate being able to serve with this other facility? I think the last speaker alluded to some of those numbers, but if you just go over that.
So Independence Academy at the end of this school year that we just finished up was serving 32 students. The difference about Independence Academy than other programs is that we have students moving in and out of the program throughout the year. So students move in because of the level of need determined by a comprehensive school, and then they may move out if they're ready to go back. So we served up to 40 at one point during this school year, and that's kind of our top of the capacity that we have at the current site. I believe that we could, I think once we know more about the number of classrooms that we can have available at the site that we're building, we would have a better idea. But our thought is that we would hope that we could have maybe 8 to 10 classrooms, which would mean that we could potentially double those numbers for each program, for the one that would serve kids on the autism spectrum and the one that would serve students with emotional behavioral disorders.
And
so
this may be a tough follow-up, but how do you feel that compares or addresses the need, or what is the degree of unmet need? If you can characterize that and quantify that.
I don't have in front of me the numbers of students that we have out of district, but it's significant. And we have probably 10 to 12 students currently that are awaiting a placement out of district. And some of them have been waiting for multiple months to access that type of programming. Many of those students, if we had the component that could meet students' needs on the autism spectrum, we would be able to meet that need here. So that's part of it. And then also the unmet need of just the physical space is extremely significant for safety.
I have a quick question, if I could, just to clarify. So you had said it could potentially double. So does that mean that you could potentially go to 80 whole for both programs, adding autism or autistic kids and then the kids that you currently serve? So 80, is that the goal?
If we're able to meet the number of classrooms between like 8 and 10, I believe that we could do that. I think we just have to take into consideration the space that we are going to be able to create at the ECEC. So I don't have an exact amount. It would depend on the layout.
If I could jump in for a second. Hi, everybody. This is Bo, Chief Academic Officer. I wanted to just share with you, when we think about kids served at Independence Academy, the goal of that service model is not to be static and not that these kids are at Independence Academy in perpetuity. Some kids may be, especially when we think about our most intense needs on the autism spectrum. But in many cases, we are working on short-term intensive supports that allow them to go back and be successful in a comprehensive middle school or high school with center-based programs we have there. So this number of kids served is not a static number. And when we get the programming and delivery model just right, we're able to do some short-term, very specific therapeutic work and supports for kids that help them get back and find success, still with wraparound supports, but those available in our comprehensive middle schools and high schools. So just as you think about the model of Independence Academy, it's not a standalone school where we would have kids just continue year after year. The goal really is a transition back into a comprehensive setting.
I have a question. Can I go ahead and ask? What the kids at Independence Academy serves are very high needs. What types of services do they get over the summer when the rest of the schools are out of session? Or how many of them need ESY, extended school year?
I'd have to pull exact numbers. Some of them do. I think a long-term goal of the programming is really to determine if the school year as it currently stands for them and the schedule is right for this students requiring this level of intensive support. So that is going to be part of our ongoing work, is just looking at their schedule, the level of intense services they are getting over the summer, and if there's a way that either we have a program that's through the school or we create something different for them. I do see that as an unmet need and something that we need to figure out moving forward.
Thank you.
So then I think there was another part of that question maybe that Jeff had around how much would this allow us to expand in the Pathways program? I'm not sure if Ashley, if you're that familiar with that program, or Bo could answer that question, but if not, we can certainly get that information, Jeff, and let you know. Does anyone have?
What I can say, and Bo, if you want to tag onto it, is they would have 4 additional classroom spaces, which would allow them to expand all 3 sessions into those 4 spaces. So I couldn't say the exact number that they serve per classroom, but it would allow expansion into those 4 classrooms for all 3 sessions.
And this is just to follow that up. Is there a perception that Pathways is space limited today or capacity limited, or does it not really suffer the same because of its blended learning model, et cetera? It really doesn't suffer the same way as the IE kids.
I'd say I don't like the term, but I would say there's mutual suffering based on a few factors. There is some belief that with more classroom space, we could expand seats in additional sessions for Pathways. What Matt will tell you right now is his staff is working in suboptimal conditions because office space is at such a premium. And a lot of the work they do with their kids at Pathways is one-on-one and small group, as we're helping kids kind of navigate a bunch of individual realities to get them to the finish line with their high school education. And he has right now 3 or 4 teachers sharing what is intended to be one office space. He's got a telephone room that is not much bigger than a very tiny closet where he has 2 teachers in. So there is some potential to expand service to kids, but there's a great need for that staff to have the kind of professional spaces they need as educators. And that's where Matt has really felt the pinch over the last couple of years.
I see Shelley has her hand up real quick. Bo, it's my understanding, is there a waiting list now for Pathways?
There is, for specific sessions. The late afternoon and evening sessions tend to be the ones that are most popular and where we need more space.
Thank you. Shelley?
I guess I have a question on the Independence Academy. I know what Bo said, not to look at the numbers and it's not a static number. But I guess in terms of the potential of the kids that could be coming into this, is there still going to be enough capacity if it grows to be able to help these kids if it gets larger?
Yeah, it's always difficult to forecast needs over time. And we're cognizant of the effects of the pandemic in terms of some of the emotional needs of our students, where we are seeing an increased need. But there's a lot of calculus that goes into this. As a district, we know we're anticipating some declining enrollment overall. That's a factor in this. What I think we can say definitively, Shelley, is that this expansion puts us in a much better place of serving current needs that we have in our system for students, realizing that as we move into the future and we think about effects of the pandemic, effects of other life stressors, our own enrollment as a district, we're going to continue to have to monitor in this space. But right now, being able to almost double our capacity to serve kids, even on a non-static model, allows us to serve much more than we've been able to do currently, and avoid these situations where we have far too many of our families on long wait lists for the kind of services that they need for kids, because these type of intensive behavioral and emotional services are at capacity, whether we're talking about school districts, community service options. They're just long waiting lists, and we're really anxious to be able to provide some more quick uptake in providing the kind of supports and services that our students and families need with really intense needs around behavior and emotional support.
Hey, Bo, this is Chris. I'm going to jump in real fast. I think part of what I'm hearing in these questions is some wonder or angst about whether we're building this proposed IA facility big enough. And I concur, Bo, trying to forecast both in your comments and Ashley's, knowing exactly how many kids might need or benefit from this program down the road is tough to forecast, especially when you add in enrollment uncertainties to boot. I would say that to the extent time proves that we need more of this capacity, I think the better way to do it is by looking at likely down the road consolidating some elementary schools and having an elementary school space provide more specialized support for students with high intensity affective and emotional needs than making this facility that we have in mind for IA bigger, whether it was on this site or on some other site. And Ashley's probably more of the expert on this piece. What I've heard in some past discussions, not recently, but in the past, is that you cannot make these kinds of programs too large. If you start to spread out your footprint a lot larger than what we're contemplating, or you plan to serve more kids there, the more kids with these kinds of high intensity needs that you have in a single setting, the more likely it is that you're going to have situations develop where there's disruption to other classrooms, and you just have a harder time at a bigger scale of having the program be productive. So that's at least been my past beliefs around this, is that you don't want to get these programs in a spot where they're serving 150, 200 kids like some other school settings would, because the wheels come off with so many kids amping up one another in disruption and tough incidents, and then the whole program fails to perform effectively. So I'll just pause there. Ashley, if you either want to say, Chris, you're crazy, or Chris, that sounds right to me, that would be helpful. But to the extent there's concerns about size, it would be good to hear your perspective on that.
Yes, I agree with you. You would not want to make this type of intensive program too large. We want to keep class size very small so that students are getting exactly what they need and still have the capacity to meet the really high level of need, knowing that there's going to be students who are aggressive, who are running away, who are really emotionally charged. There could be aggression between students. So I do think there is a happy medium. And I will say that even with Independence Academy in and of itself being able to hold about 40 students, we have not had an instance where we have kept a student out because of capacity. So I think that this need is going to always exist. And we are also working with comprehensive schools to get a better programming model in that space so that, you know, this need is not growing too rapidly, but it will exist. So I think keeping it on the smaller end and then determining the need down the road, we will always have this need. And especially on the autism spectrum, I would say about 6 years ago, we would have 1 or 2 students moving from preschool into our center-based programs. And this year we have 20. So the need, especially on the autism spectrum, is growing significantly. And we have to respond to be able to provide high level programming that is, you know, really specific for these students' needs.
So I see Shelley had her hand up and then Julie. Oh, Shelley took her hand down. So now it's Julie. Hi, Julie.
Okay, sorry, I have 2 quick questions. The first one is, I keep hearing autism, and I want to know, like, what else do you see there? And I apologize if you covered this in the beginning. I had to jump on a little late. And the second thing kind of tied in there is, what does this program look like academically? Like what classroom, like typical classroom services are there? Thank you.
So we currently serve at Independence Academy students with emotional behavioral disabilities, and this type of expansion would allow us to expand into serving students on the autism spectrum. So it's currently a program that does serve students with emotional and behavioral disabilities, and all of the students are on IEPs. And so the classroom is, the teachers are teaching to grade level standards, and then they are providing additional instruction per the student's IEP. So if the student has the need for direct specialized instruction in math or literacy, they're also receiving that. They do access an online program called Edgenuity, which is something that Pathways also utilizes for the credit recovery. So that's a portion of what they do throughout the day. We are also analyzing the academic structure and trying to shore up all of that a bit as we're moving into the next school year as well. So they are teaching to the academic standards for the grade level, and then also providing instruction for the student's IEP.
Okay. We'll move on then to talk a little bit more about the facility. Thank you, Ashley, Bo, and Chris, and for all of your questions, everyone. So just so you all know, so what we're talking about here is a demolition and then reconstruction project at the current ECEC building, which also used to be Vantage Point for some of us that have been around here for a long time. That building is just to the southwest of Thornton High School. The anticipated costs that you see in the screen in front of you are rough order of magnitude costs, as you can imagine. We're feeling pretty good about the modular building costs. So let me explain what we're going to go back to this site with. And Tim and Margie, feel free to jump in if I miss something, but we are looking at, based on the construction timeline and having a goal of opening this facility in August of 2023, we are looking at doing another modular building. So this would be a building that is built off-site and then brought to this facility, but then it will sit on a foundation. We have a foundation that's there currently, and we are still doing the engineering study right now to find out if we can use that foundation. If we can, that would be great. It will save us some money. So you'll see a couple of bullets down here. There's a 2-inch water tap and then new foundation. Those are things that we're still working through on this facility. So we have a current water tap, but with the current codes and regulations, we might have to add a water tap. So we have 2 taps, one that's specific for fire suppression, and then one that would serve as our sanitary water tap, our sewer tap. So you'll see that we're at $250 a square foot for the modular building. That puts us at $3.6 million. We do have some one-time cost in there of FF&E. You're used to hearing those. We're still in the IT, we're still getting that information from IT as far as the equipment costs for that facility. There's a playground on that site right now that we would take out. That playground is for early childhood education. So we would take that playground out and put some sort of field in that space, so an outdoor space for these students. And then we have contingency and design cost. Before we go on to the next slide real quick, I just want to say that we have talked about with this group about what to do with this building. We've talked internally around what to do with this building. There are some significant limitations. We even had a conversation around, should we keep IA where it is and maybe move pathways? One of the significant limitations of this facility is the parking. So it is built on a tier. So just above this is Brittany Hill, and then below it is Thornton High School. So we have a pad site here that's fairly limited on the square footage. So a program where students access the program via bus is really ideal for this program. So that's one of the reasons that we like this site for IA. So next slide real quick. Whoops. Okay, that's fine. There we go. You're fine. There we go. So funding options. We are looking at a couple of different funding options, or we did look at a couple of funding options, and I'm going to make a recommendation today. So we looked at cap reserve. We did just encumber, I think it was around $3.6 million for the 5-star online lease and build out costs that will now, that was coming out of cap reserve. So our preference is to not go to cap reserve for this. And then we are also looking at unencumbered bond funds. We have two different areas where we would have potentially unencumbered bond funds. One is the baseline budget down at the bottom there, that's $9.96 million. And then we also have bond project savings. Through this process, Susie was working with our bond attorney, and I think it was some new information, at least for me. I don't know if it was for everyone, but for me, it was new information that we were anticipating holding the baseline project funds until a time we were going to start to build that building. Hopefully, again, with the passing of a 2023 bond, we would then issue those funds and start working on a baseline building. What we found out since that time is that the money that's sitting in the bond that we were hoping to save, that would be unencumbered dollars to apply towards baseline, those funds have to be encumbered and have to be in a working project in order for us to go out and sell new bonds if we're successful in a bond election. Did I cover that correctly, Susie? So our recommendation is that we would use, we would release the unencumbered dollars for baseline, as well as money that are in project savings, and start to spend those dollars down. A big chunk of those, $5.5 to $6 million, we're going to actually request $6 million, would be for this project. So that would be to demo the existing facility, build the new building, potentially have a new foundation, new water tap, design costs, and that comes back at $6 million. So my recommendation to the board next Wednesday evening will be that we would use unencumbered bond funds to the tune of $6 million to fund this project. Next slide. So just real quick, we talked about this facility information, a little bit about the modular building. I do think it's important for folks to know that the building has a 40-year life expectancy, so it's not a typical mobile that you would see parked outside of a school. This is a building that sits on a concrete foundation. It's 14,500 square foot, which matches the footprint of the building that's there currently. And then I talked about the additional cost factors to be determined, which are the water tap and whether or not we can use the existing foundation. Margie, Tim, is there anything you want to add on this slide?
I just wanted to let everyone know we are meeting with the city of Thornton today about the water tap question, so we will know more of what their requirements will be. And just using the existing foundation we feel is really important, because it doesn't just save us money, it saves us tons of time. So we are, as soon as we get final approval, we will begin that assessment with a local structural engineer to assess the existing condition and if the foundation will meet the current requirements of the current accepted codes. So just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, so do we have, I think the next slide is basically just kicks us into questions. So do we have questions about the building itself, the process that we're going to use, which is a design build process, and then the funding. I see, Jeff, your hand is up. I'll let you kick us off.
So, I'm certainly not a construction guy. Just think about how much our additions at Arapahoe Ridge and Cotton Creek cost us. That the 3.6 number just, it seems really low, but maybe, I don't have a good feel for what 14,000 square feet is like. So I guess that's my only reaction is and again, it's probably modular construction, so that's more cost effective, but help me, given the other projects and what it costs us to do other schools, right? Why should this be that cheap?
Hey, Jeff, I'm happy to answer that. So modular construction, you're right, is generally a little bit less expensive on a cost per square foot basis. So you back some dollars off of that. With the additions at Arapahoe Ridge and Cotton Creek, we started from absolute ground zero. So there was site grading, over excavation, soil treatments, of course, the foundations and the caissons that were part of both of those systems there. So those costs got factored into both of those additions. And we're just not there with this particular project, given that we're hoping that we will be able to reuse that foundation and stick with that 350 if we have to redo a foundation. We just don't know that yet, but there's some components on the front end, utility costs, things like that are already in place at this particular site. And then to further address your question, the Arapahoe Ridge and Cotton Creek projects also had brand new playground components, interior renovations and upgrades of the existing buildings. So those figures that you are probably looking at or recall do include some of those modifications that were made to the existing facilities. So hopefully that helps narrow that gap a little bit.
You leverage a lot of the existing infrastructure. It sounds like that's the biggest savings, and in theory, the foundation.
Right, and we had sizable work inside the existing buildings as well. New flooring throughout the corridors. Arapahoe Ridge had 2 new playgrounds, a primary and an ECE, tied to that total overall price tag. So fire alarm upgrades, you name it. There's some other things that are rolled into those 2 addition projects.
One other minimal thing, and Tim, you kind of touched on it, but Jeff, our plan, besides removing the playground and putting a kind of a play field, would be to leave the site as is, besides possibly cleaning up some existing paved surfaces, but we would not redesign the site. We wouldn't be able to make that happen. And we feel like it'll work for this project.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see Hannah, then Shelley, then Angie. So Hannah?
Hi, just a quick question to clarify. This building we're talking about taking down and replacing or rebuilding, it's currently empty. There's no other classrooms in there that we have to relocate as well? Or is it just completely just empty right now?
It is completely empty. That building was our former ECEC building, and we abandoned that facility. It was a mid-year abandonment in 2018. Does that sound right? No, sorry, 2019.
Actually, it was 2020.
Okay.
2019, 2020. So it's been empty about 2 years.
I'm gonna blame COVID for the last 2.5 years just being a fog. So, but it was recently that we abandoned that because of ongoing water intrusion that we were having in that facility that we could not rectify. And then as we started to learn more about the building and the age of the facility, how we acquired the building, we decided at that point, we made a recommendation to LRPAC some time ago that we abandon the building and we put those programs out into schools. Shelley.
Hey, I guess my only other concern across the foundation, I know Jeff asked about Thunder Vista, but the current conditions at 5 Star, which across the street, with the problems with the foundation there, do you see anything foreseeable for something that's just across the street that's been existing for a little while?
I don't. We haven't had major movement issues at that site. So the foundation, we think from what we've seen and from from some initial observations, we think the foundation is in good condition and the site is not experiencing a lot of movement. So I don't have those concerns personally.
That would be something that we'd be taking into consideration as the engineer looks at that, at the foundation, as well as we consider whether or not we're going to be able to reuse it, is if we see cracking or anything that would indicate movement. But I agree with Margie, that's been a pretty stable site for us for quite some time. Angie.
Hi, good morning again. I spoke earlier, I was in the car earlier, so finally getting to transition a computer, so thank you. But can we go back to the funding slide? The between the bond, yeah, there we go. So is the unencumbered bond funds, can you please clarify, is that money that wasn't utilized during the construction projects originally proposed that we looked at years ago on this committee? Or is this like kind of what if situation if another bond gets approved? And then I have another question after that.
I will start, and then I'll have phone or friends jump in as well. So let's talk about bond project savings first. So when we set up a project, when we get the guaranteed maximum price on a project through CMGC, we will encumber those dollars. And then at the conclusion of that project, if for some reason we've been able to acquire maybe goods or services for costs less than anticipated, or the project maybe was faster, there could be any number of reasons why that we did not exceed that guaranteed maximum price. And so we actually got a better value than anticipated. And so there's project savings sitting in those projects. When we close those projects out, those dollars come back to the bond. And so that now they become basically dollars that are unencumbered, unassigned. And we have more projects that will be closing out after this summer. So each summer we have found additional dollars or have closed out projects that have resulted in additional dollars being available to reinvest in bond projects. And then as far as the baseline school project funds, that was initially part of the bond plan, as we've had that $10 million sitting there waiting for a baseline project. And we have attempted some fundraising and some other things in that space. We know that the baseline school needs to occur and that we're going to have to build it in that community. But in order for us to do that, it's going to take another bond cycle for us to do that. And I guess I'm going to stop talking about that project because I think Chris and Susie probably have a lot more, can add a lot more to that, since we originally assigned those dollars or put those in that budget. We've learned a lot more as far as Urban Renewal Authority and how we're going to fund this building, but it's still going to require another bond cycle, I believe. Chris, Susie, do you want to add anything to that?
Susie, you can jump in.
Yeah, there are a lot of other options, but yeah, we'll require another bond cycle as the plan that we have right now. And I think one of your other questions that you'd had in there was any of this unencumbered, assuming new bond funds, and no, all of it's based off of the funds that were already issued previously.
Great, and I'm sure that this is a given, but it's it can be reallocated out, like it's not against the bond guidelines, right? It can be reallocated to a different project.
Correct. All of this can be reallocated. We did check first with bond counsel to make sure that all of these projects that we are looking at reallocating to fall within the guidance and the language within the ballot language of which was approved. So we do check first to make sure before we go forward.
Awesome. And then lastly, I'm sure that there's going to be some energy efficiency measures and sustainability measures for this building. And just so you know, there's rebate dollars and programs that you can have your sustainability team look into to hopefully get some money back, which is always a good thing. So that's all. Thank you. Well, my question, I guess, is will there be energy efficiency efforts when you go to rebuild this building? I assume so. I assume that's always at top of mind during construction plans and design.
Yes.
Yeah, Angie.
Oh,
Ladies first.
I was just going to say that we'll follow all the new energy codes that we're required to follow, the 2021 energy codes that the state requires us to follow. So yes, we will meet all of those aspects for this building.
And I was just going to add that with this being a modular type of construction, there may be certain limitations that the factory may have when it comes to that, and putting together the building envelope, et cetera. We're just not that far along in the process yet, Angie. We're still trying to work out floor plans and things like that on the programming side. And then as we take a deeper dive into design and start working directly with the manufacturer, we'll certainly be having those discussions to determine, what makes the most sense from an energy efficiency cost standpoint, and, getting back to, again, what their limitations may or may not be in a factory. It's, I've not done a modular commercial building like this in probably 13 years. So I'm sure a lot has changed.
Great, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions about the facility or the funding? And then I guess my last question will be, are there concerns? So our intent is to bring this to the board next Wednesday evening and ask the board to approve the expenditure of $6 million, or the encumbrance of $6 million from the 2016 bond funds to get this project going. We are, as Tim and Mark, you've talked about, we're not really far along because until we get the funding approved from the board, and then that allows us to sign contracts the next day. Literally the next day, then we can start to engage this work in a much deeper manner. So just want to know if there's any major or significant concerns from this group moving forward.
I support this, Pat. This is Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
I would agree. This is Jeff.
Agree from Chrissy.
I'll echo.
This is Jill.
Echoed, this is Angie.
I'm in support. This is Hannah.
This is Shelley. I support this.
Adam, what do you think?
Yep. Oh yeah, sounds good. Sorry.
I saw you unmute. I just didn't talk. All right. Well, again, as I think that's everyone. Did everyone get a chance to weigh in? My screen moved around a little bit. So, well, I really appreciate everyone, again, jumping on this call very last minute, and your thoughtful questions. It's been a good conversation, and really appreciate your engagement with the district and ongoing engagement, especially here in the summertime. Jill, try to find air conditioning as much as you can and take lots of water with you today, and good luck with that 117-degree temperature.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good summer.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.